The stars were old and cold in this part of space. The human ship, the UES Odyssey, moved through the darkness. It was a ship of peace built for looking and learning. Its crew were scientists and explorers. They mapped new stars and studied new worlds. They did not look for a fight. Captain Jin sat in his chair on the quiet bridge. He watched the main screen. It showed a peaceful star field. He felt a small sense of pride. His ship and his crew had done good work here. Soon they would start the long journey back to Earth. A soft beep broke the silence. It came from the station of his tactical officer, Min, Captain, Min said. Her voice was calm, but Jin heard a small change in it. I'm picking up an energy signature. It's moving fast. Very fast. Jin sat up a little straighter. Identification? Unknown. Min's fingers moved quickly over her screen. It doesn't match any known human or friendly alien design. The power output is massive. On the main screen, a new dot appeared. It was far away, but it was getting bigger fast. Then it split into 3 separate dots. 3 contacts, Min confirmed. Her voice was tighter now. They are on an intercept course. They will be here in 90 seconds. A low alarm began to sound on the bridge. The soft white lights changed to a slow, pulsing yellow. The rest of the bridge crew looked up from their work. Their faces were serious. Red alert, Jin said, his voice firm. Shields up. Power to defensive systems. He knew his ship was not a warship. Its shields were light. Its few weapons were for scaring off space rocks, not for a real fight. But he had to try. Shields are at maximum, Min reported. Weapons are online, but Captain, their power levels are off the scale. They are warships. We are not, Jin nodded. He had known this was a possibility. Space was big and mostly empty, but you could still meet the wrong kind of people, or the wrong kind of thing. The 3 ships arrived. They did not slow down gently. They simply stopped, appearing right in front of the Odyssey. They were like nothing Jin had ever seen. They were all sharp angles and dark, ugly metal. They looked like giant knives made for cutting through the void. They were much, much bigger than the Odyssey. Receiving a transmission, said the comms officer, a young man named Tay. His face was pale, audio only. The translation software is working on it. A voice came through the speakers. It was a harsh guttural sound like rocks grinding together. The computer translated the words in a flat electronic tone. Unidentified vessel. You have entered the territory of the Cathar Imperium. Power down your engines and weapons. Surrender your vessel and your biological selves. You have 1 minute to comply. Jin felt a cold knot form in his stomach. Biological selves. They meant his crew. They were not being asked to leave. They were being asked to give up everything. Open a channel, Jin said to Tay. The young man pressed a button and nodded. Channel open, Captain. Jin took a deep breath. He stood up, wanting to face them on his feet. This is Captain Jin of the United Earth ship Odyssey. We are a scientific and exploration vessel. We mean you no harm. We did not know this was your territory. We are leaving peacefully now. There was a short silence. Then the grinding voice returned. This time Jin was sure he could hear laughter in it. Your designation is meaningless. Your purpose is irrelevant. You are a resource. You cannot win a fight. You cannot run. Your technology is primitive. Surrender is your only logical path. You now have 30 seconds. The channel closed with a sharp click. Jin looked around his bridge. He saw Min, her jaw tight, her eyes fixed on her screen, ready to fight a battle she knew she would lose. He saw Tay, scared but trying to be brave. He saw Hana, his science officer, watching him with calm, intelligent eyes. She was already thinking, he knew. Thinking of ways out. Report, Jin said, his voice low. Their weapons are locked onto us, Min said. A single shot from any one of them would cut us in half. Our shields might stop 1, maybe 2 hits from a smaller weapon. Theirs are not small. Engines, Jin asked. Impulse drive is offline from the last jump, said the engineer over the comm. It needs 12 more hours to cool and reset. We have only maneuvering thrusters. We cannot outrun them. They were trapped. They were outgunned. They were slow. The message from the Cathar was clear. Give up or be destroyed. Jin knew what surrender to a species like this meant. The stories were told in whispers. Ships that surrendered were never seen again. Crews were never heard from. They were taken, used for parts, for labor, for experiments. It was not an option. He looked at his crew again. They were all looking at him. They were waiting for his order. He saw no fear of him in their eyes. He saw trust. They trusted him to find a way. He made his decision. He opened the ship-wide intercom. Every person on the Odyssey would hear his voice now. In the corridors, in the engine room, in the science labs. All hands. This is the captain. His voice was calm and clear, echoing through the entire ship. We are in a situation. We are facing a hostile force known as the Cathar. They have demanded our surrender. He paused, letting the words sink in. He knew some of his crew would be terrified. He knew some would be angry. They believe we are weak. They believe we will give up because we cannot win a direct fight. They are correct. We cannot win a direct fight. Another pause. He could feel the tension on the bridge, thick and heavy. But, he said, and the word was like a hammer, we are not going to surrender. I repeat, we are not going to surrender. The Odyssey is our home. You are my crew. We do not give up our home. We do not give up our family. He saw Min's shoulders straighten. He saw Tay nod, his fear replaced by a new determination. They are going to board us. They expect us to stand in a line and put our hands up. We will not do that. Instead, we will initiate Protocol Chimera. I say again, initiate Protocol Chimera. All teams to your stations. Good luck. He closed the channel and sat back down. The bridge was silent for a moment. Then it exploded into activity. Protocol Chimera was not a standard procedure. It was not in any official Earth Fleet manual. It was a plan Jin and his senior officers had dreamed up during long, boring nights. It was a plan for when there was no hope. A plan for turning a ship of science into a house of horrors. Min was already at work. Initiating power down of non-essential systems. Routing bridge control to secondary command in Cargo Bay 2. Environmental controls are now under manual command. Hana stood up.
I will go to the science lab.
We can prepare some surprises for our guests. Jin nodded. Do it. Use whatever you have. As Hana left, the main screen showed the Cathar ships again. A new, smaller object shot out from the largest ship. It was a boarding pod, sharp and ugly like its mothership. Then another, and another. They slammed into the Odyssey's hull with a deep, thunderous boom that vibrated through the entire ship. The battle for the Odyssey had begun. But it would not be the battle the Cathar were expecting. They were prepared for a fight against soldiers. They were not prepared for a fight against the ship itself. The sound was the first thing, a deafening metallic crunch that shook the entire UES Odyssey from nose to tail. It was the sound of the Cathar boarding pods slamming into the hull and burning their way through. On the bridge, the lights flickered and died, replaced by the dim, pulsing red of emergency lighting. The low hum of the ship's systems was gone, leaving an eerie silence broken only by the blare of the intrusion alarm. Captain Jin remained in his chair, his face lit by the red glow. He looked calm, but his hands were clenched tightly on the armrests. Min status. Tactical Officer Min was already working at her darkened console. They have made 3 breaches, decks 4, 7, and 9. They are establishing bridgeheads. Our internal sensors are being jammed. I have limited data. Her voice was a professional monotone pushing down the fear. Understood, Jin said. He opened a channel to the new hidden command center in Cargo Bay 2. Hana, they are inside. The ship is yours. In the cramped makeshift command center, Science Officer Hana nodded to herself. Surrounded by portable screens and rerouted cables, she was now the central nervous system of the ship. Her fingers danced across a keyboard. Initiating Protocol Chimera Phase 2. Let's make them feel unwelcome. Throughout the Odyssey, the environment began to change. In the main corridors, the standard white lights shut off, plunging them into near total darkness. The only illumination came from the flashing red alert panels on the floors, which cast long, dancing shadows. The gentle flow of air from the vents stopped, making the silence feel heavy and suffocating. The first squad of Cathar warriors, led by Sub-Commander Croc, stood in the dark corridor on Deck 4. They were giants, their armored forms towering in the confined space. Their helmets had advanced optics, but the shifting red light and deep shadows made it difficult to see very far. They had expected bright lights, screaming humans, and organized resistance. They found nothing but an empty, silent, and hostile maze. Croc signaled with a clawed hand. His squad moved forward, their heavy boots echoing on the metal floor. They were confident. Their scanners showed human life signs, but they were faint and scattered, moving in strange ways through the walls and floors. Suddenly, a human voice, calm and clear, echoed through the corridor from hidden speakers. It was translated into their guttural language. Warning. Atmospheric pressure unstable in Section 4B. The Cathar warriors paused, looking around. A loud hiss of air screamed from a side corridor ahead of them. It sounded exactly like a hull breach. Several of the warriors instinctively braced themselves, checking the seals on their armored suits. But their internal sensors showed no pressure drop. It was a trick, Crocs growled in anger. Ignore it. Move forward. They pushed on, but the seed of doubt was planted. The humans were playing games. In a narrow maintenance shaft, Crewman Day and Engineer Sue were crawling quickly. They wore simple work overalls, not combat gear. Day carried a heavy magnetic crowbar. Sue had a large industrial plasma cutter slung over her back. They listened to the Cathar's movements through the ship's internal microphones. They're heading for the main junction on Deck 4, Sue whispered, looking at a small data pad. We can get ahead of them. They moved like ghosts through the ship's arteries, passages the Cathar were too big to even see. Back in the corridor, Crocs' squad reached a four-way intersection. Their scanner pointed down the left passage, indicating a cluster of human life signs. This way, Crocs ordered. As the last warrior entered the intersection, a heavy metal door slid down from the ceiling behind them, sealing with a solid thud. At the same time, another door slammed shut in front of them. They were trapped in a large metal box. Breach it, Crocs barked. Before his soldiers could act, a small grate in the ceiling popped open. 3 metal canisters fell to the floor with a clatter. They didn't release smoke or gas. Instead, they began to emit a high-pitched whining sound. To human ears, it was just an annoying ring. But to the Cathar, with their highly sensitive auditory organs, it was pure agony. The sound was amplified inside their helmets. They roared in pain, clutching the sides of their heads, their weapons falling to their sides. Their advanced armor was useless against this simple sonic attack. This was the moment. The panel next to Crocs slid open silently. Crewman Day leaped out, his crowbar already swinging. He didn't aim for the thick chest plate. He aimed for the back of the warrior's knee, where the armor was jointed. There was a sickening crunch of metal and bone. The Cathar soldier screamed and collapsed. From the other side, Sue emerged. Her plasma cutter flared to life with a bright blue flame. She drove the superheated tip into the power pack on the back of another disoriented warrior. There was a flash and a small explosion, and the soldier fell forward, smoke rising from his armor. The fight was brutal and short. The Cathar were stronger and better armed, but they were blind, in pain, and trapped. The humans were fast, precise, and fighting for their lives. They used their knowledge of the ship and simple tools as deadly weapons. Sue was trying to disable a third warrior when another Cathar, further down the trapped section, shook off the sonic pain. He saw her and raised his plasma caster. Day saw it too. "Sue, down," he yelled. He shoved her hard and she fell behind a structural beam. The plasma bolt meant for her hit Day square in the chest. He was thrown back against the wall with a sickening thud and slid to the floor, not moving. Sue's eyes widened in horror. She screamed in rage and grief, lifting her plasma cutter. But the Cathar who had shot Day was already aiming at her. Just then, the containment fields at both ends of the corridor vanished. The doors slid back into the ceiling. The sonic canisters shut off. The remaining Cathar, including Crocs, were stunned and confused. They saw their 2 dead comrades and one of the small humans lying motionless. The other human was gone, having disappeared back into the wall. Crocs roared in pure fury. They had not lost a warrior in close combat in decades, and now 2 were dead, killed not by advanced weapons, but by tools, by tricks, by these vermin. On the Cathar command ship, the commander listened to Crocs' furious report. His initial amusement was gone. This was not going as planned. The humans were not surrendering. They were not fighting honorably. They were infesting their own ship, biting and scratching from the shadows. He looked at the data from the boarding pods. Casualties: 2 Cathar warriors confirmed dead. 3 more injured. Human casualties estimated 1, maybe 2. The math was illogical. It was unacceptable. "Send in the second wave," the commander hissed to his officer. "Secure engineering. I want that ship's heart, then we will crush the rest of them." Back in the dark corridors of the Odyssey, Sub-Commander Crocs regrouped his shaken squad. The easy capture was over. They were now in a war in the dark against an enemy they did not understand. The calm human voice came over the speakers again. "Life support to Deck 4 will be intermittent. Please note the temperature is dropping." Crocs looked at his environmental readout. It was indeed getting colder. He felt a chill that had nothing to do with the ship's systems. The silence after the fight was heavier than the darkness. Sub-Commander Crocs stood over the body of his fallen warrior. The smell of burned wiring and something else, something sharp and biological, filled the air. The human Day lay where he had fallen. He was not moving. The other human, the one with the cutter, was gone. She had vanished back into the walls like a ghost. Crocs felt a hot anger burning in his chest. This was not battle. This was butchery. It was dishonorable. He keyed his comm unit, his voice a low growl. Command. First squad has met resistance. 2 warriors lost. 1 human casualty. The enemy is using the ship's systems against us. They are hiding in the infrastructure. The response from the command ship was cold. Acknowledged. Your new priority is engineering. Secure the main power core. 2nd squad is moving to the bridge. 3rd squad will secure life support. Do not let these creatures delay you further. Crocs turned to his 4 remaining warriors. One was limping from a blow to his leg joint. Their confidence was gone, replaced by a wary tension. They held their weapons ready, scanning the dark, red-lit corridors, expecting another attack from the shadows. New orders, Crocs said. We go to engineering. Stay sharp. They are clever. They moved forward, a tight, nervous group. The ship seemed to breathe around them. A vent would sigh here. A pipe would clang there. Every shadow seemed to move. The calm human voice returned to the speakers. Adjusting atmospheric composition on Deck 5. Nitrogen levels increasing. It was another lie, probably, but they couldn't be sure. It made them check their suit readouts again, their attention divided. Meanwhile, in a service duct above them, Sue was crawling as fast as she could. Tears of anger and grief streaked through the grime on her face. Day was gone. Her friend, who had just saved her life, was gone. She pushed the pain down, focusing on the task. She had to get to the next point. She had to help the others. She reached a small access panel that overlooked a major corridor junction. This was the main path to engineering. Below, she could see the 2nd squad of Cathar moving quickly. They were more cautious than Crocs's team, their heads constantly swiveling. Sue pulled a small device from her pocket. It was a simple remote control for the emergency fire suppression system. She waited until the squad was directly underneath the main sprinkler head. She pressed the button. Instead of water, a thick white fire-retardant foam erupted from the ceiling, covering the Cathar warriors. It was harmless, but it was dense and sticky. It blinded their helmet visors and clogged the sensitive parts of their weapons. The warriors roared in frustration, stumbling and clawing at the foam. From a side corridor, a group of 3 human crew members emerged. They were led by Min, the tactical officer. She had left the bridge to fight directly. They didn't have plasma casters. One held a powerful industrial laser used for cutting hull plates. Another had a canister of liquid nitrogen for emergency coolant. The 3rd had a heavy wrench. They didn't try to fight the foamy-covered warriors. They ran past them. Their target was the wall panel behind the Cathar squad. The panel housed the main data conduit for the ship's internal security network. Min jammed the laser into the panel, melting it shut. The other crew member sprayed the liquid nitrogen on it, freezing the molten metal into a solid, useless block. They were not trying to kill the warriors. They were trying to blind the ship. They were cutting the eyes and ears of the Cathar, making it harder for them to track the human crew. The Cathar warriors finally cleared the foam from their visors and saw the humans. They raised their weapons, but the humans were already gone, disappearing back into a service hatch. One of the Cathar fired a wild plasma bolt. It hit the wall where the humans had been, scorching the metal but doing no real damage. Crocs's squad heard the commotion and moved faster. They were getting closer to engineering. The corridors here were wider, filled with larger pipes and humming power conduits. The air was warmer. They reached a long, straight hallway that led to the heavy reinforced doors of the engineering bay. The doors were sealed tight. Breaching charges, Crocs ordered. 2 of his warriors moved forward, placing small magnetic discs on the door's seam. In the hidden command center, Hana watched all of this on a flickering screen. A small schematic of the ship showed the Cathar positions. The red dots were clustered at the engineering door. She opened a channel to the engine room. June, they are at your door. Inside engineering, Chief Engineer June was a large, calm man. He stood in the middle of the roaring heart of the Odyssey. The warp core pulsed with soft blue light. Around him, his small team was ready. We are ready, Hana, June said, his voice steady. The garden is prepared. He looked at the young apprentice Lee, who was holding a large modified cargo hauler's control unit. Lee nodded, his face pale but determined. Outside, the Cathar finished placing the charges. "Clear," one of them shouted. The explosion was loud and bright in the confined space. The heavy engineering door was blown inward, landing on the deck with a deafening crash. Smoke and dust filled the doorway. Crocs led the way, his weapon raised. He stepped through the smoke into engineering. He expected to see the human engineers surrendering, their hands in the air, protecting their precious machinery. He saw something else entirely. The engineering bay was vast and open, and it was dark, lit only by the emergency lights and the glow of the warp core. The human engineers were not standing by the core. They were positioned behind heavy consoles and machinery, using them as cover. They held tools, not weapons, but that was not what made Croc stop. Between his squad and the warp core was the ship's hydroponics bay. It had been moved into engineering for some maintenance work before the attack. It was a large area filled with trays of plants and small trees, a green and peaceful place. Now the plants were moving. The Cathar had never seen anything like it. From behind the leafy greens, a low rumbling growl echoed through the chamber. Then a shape emerged. It was one of the ship's cargo haulers, a small six-wheeled vehicle used for moving heavy parts. But it was not a normal hauler anymore. The humans had welded thick sheets of scrap metal to its front, making a crude plow. On top, they had mounted two of the industrial plasma cutters, their tips glowing with hot blue light. The front grille of the hauler was covered in sharp-pointed pieces of metal. Like teeth, it looked like a metal monster. Sitting in the driver's seat was Apprentice Lee, his small form almost hidden behind the makeshift armor. His eyes were wide with fear, but his hands were firm on the controls. June, from behind his console, gave the signal. Lee slammed the accelerator. The modified hauler roared to life, its electric motors whining loudly. It shot forward, straight towards the group of Cathar warriors. The aliens were stunned. This was not a tactic. This was madness. They opened fire. Plasma bolts slammed into the hauler's armor, melting holes in the scrap metal. One bolt hit a plasma cutter, causing it to explode in a shower of sparks. But the hauler kept coming, an unstoppable rumbling beast. It plowed into the front two Cathar warriors. The sound was terrible, a crushing of metal and bone. The hauler pushed them back, its sharp teeth grinding against their armor. The other warriors scattered, firing wildly. One of their shots hit the hauler's control panel. There was a burst of flame and smoke. Lai cried out as the controls died in his hands. The hauler veered to the side, slammed into a wall, and stopped, its wheels still spinning. In that moment of chaos, June and his engineers attacked. They didn't fire weapons. They used the ship itself. June rerouted power, sending a massive surge through the metal deck plating where the remaining Cathar were standing. The two warriors screamed as thousands of volts of electricity coursed through their armored suits. They convulsed and fell to the ground, smoke rising from their bodies. Crocs had been knocked aside by the hauler. He was now alone, the last of his squad. He saw his warriors dead or dying. He saw the crazy human machine smashed against the wall. He saw the human engineers looking at him, their tools in their hands, their faces hard. He raised his plasma caster, aiming at June. But before he could fire, a heavy wrench came flying through the air from the side. It was thrown by Sue, who had just crawled out of a ventilation shaft. The wrench hit Crocs' helmet with a loud clang, not hurting him but spoiling his aim. His plasma bolt went wide, hitting the ceiling. Crocs turned towards this new threat, roaring in pure rage. He was the professional soldier. They were the maintenance crew, and they were beating him. He took a step towards Sue, his weapon rising again. Then he stopped. He looked at the dead humans. He looked at his own dead warriors. He looked at the crazy machine. He realized that securing engineering was impossible. He was one against many, in a room these humans knew better than he did. For the first time, a feeling that was not anger touched Sub-Commander Crocs. It was the cold finger of fear. He turned and ran. He fled back through the blasted doorway into the dark corridors, leaving his dead behind. The humans in engineering did not chase him. They simply watched him go, already turning to their next task, to seal the breach and prepare for the next wave. The battle for the ship's heart was over. The humans had won. The silence on the Cathar command ship was absolute. The commander stared at the tactical display. his body rigid with a cold building fury. The little red dots representing his boarding parties were not moving forward. Some were blinking, indicating casualties. Others were retreating. The reports were insane. A vehicle made from scrap metal, tools used as weapons, the ship itself fighting back. And the casualties. His elite warriors were being torn apart by mechanics and gardeners. Sub-Commander Crox's voice came over the comm, ragged and breathless. Engineering is lost. The squad is gone. They are insane. They do not fight like soldiers. They fight like animals protecting a den. The commander cut the channel. He did not want to hear more excuses. He turned to his second-in-command. The bridge. They have focused their defenses elsewhere. They will have left their command center vulnerable. It is the head of the beast. Cut it off and the body will die. He gave the order. The largest remaining boarding party, fresh and at full strength, was to push directly for the bridge. They were to use heavy breaching charges and take no chances. They were to capture or kill the human leadership. On the Odyssey, the mood was grim but determined. In the hidden command center in Cargo Bay 2, Captain Jin listened to the reports. Engineering is secure, but June reports they can't hold against another full assault, Hana said, her face lit by the screens. We lost Lee and Sue is injured. Jin closed his eyes for a moment. Lai was just a kid. He pushed the grief away. There was no time for it now. Where are they focusing now? Hana pointed to a schematic. A large cluster of red dots was moving fast and purposefully through the ship's main spine, heading straight for the bow. For the bridge. They're coming for you, Captain. A small, hard smile touched Jin's lips. Good, let them. He had expected this. It was the logical move. He turned to Min, who had just returned from her mission, her clothes stained with fire foam. You know what to do, Min nodded. The stage is set. Jin then looked at Tay, the young comms officer. Tay, it's time. Take the package and go. Tay, who had been quiet through the whole battle, stood up straight. He picked up a small, heavily shielded data drive. This was the heart of Protocol Chimera. I won't let you down, sir. He turned and disappeared into a small maintenance hatch, heading deep into the ship's belly. Jin, Hana, and Min then gathered the few remaining crew from the command center. They picked up their own simple tools, cutters, wrenches, and a few laser welders. They left the portable screens and equipment behind. The command center was now useless to them. They moved silently through the dark, empty corridors, leaving the bridge section behind. They were abandoning their post. The Cathar breach team reached the heavy blast doors of the bridge without any resistance. The corridors leading to it were empty and silent. It felt like a trap, but their scanners showed only a few life signs inside the bridge itself. The humans were there. Place the charges, the squad leader ordered. The warriors fixed powerful explosives to the door's hinges and lock. They moved back to a safe distance. Fire in the hole. The explosion was tremendous. The reinforced blast door, designed to withstand the vacuum of space, was torn from its frame and thrown inward. The sound was a deafening roar of metal and fire. Smoke and debris filled the doorway. The Cathar squad stormed in, weapons ready, expecting a final, desperate stand. They fanned out across the bridge, their boots crunching on broken glass and plastic. The bridge was a wreck. Consoles were dark and shattered from the blast. Wires hung from the ceiling. The main view screen was a spiderweb of cracks. But there were no humans, no bodies, no return fire. The squad leader moved cautiously forward. Then he saw it. In the captain's chair, a single figure was seated, facing the broken view screen. It was a human dressed in a standard crew uniform. It did not move. The Cathar warriors surrounded it, their weapons aimed. The squad leader stepped closer. He saw then that it was not a living human. It was a maintenance android, its face a blank plastic mask. It was powered down, sitting perfectly still. In its lap, the android held a simple data slate. The squad leader reached out and took the slate. As he touched it, the screen lit up. The face of Captain Jin appeared. He looked calm. He looked directly into the camera. Welcome to the bridge, Jin's recorded voice said, the translation flat and clear. I hope the journey was not too difficult. The Cathar warriors looked around, confused and angry. They had fought so hard for this? You have taken the command center of the UES Odyssey, Jin continued. Congratulations. By our records, you now control approximately 3% of the ship's total volume. The squad leader growled. his grip tightening on the data slate. The life support controls for the bridge, environmental systems and internal communications for this section, Jin said, a faint smile on his face, have been rerouted. They are now managed from a single terminal in the Waste Reclamation Processing Center on Deck 9. I wish you the best of luck in finding it. The screen went blank. The Cathar squad leader stood frozen, the data slate in his hand. He looked at the dark, useless consoles around him. He looked at the empty chairs. He looked at the stupid, silent android in the captain's chair. They had not captured the head of the beast. They had captured an empty shell. The head was somewhere else, still thinking, still planning, still fighting. A deep, primal roar of frustration erupted from the squad leader. He threw the data slate against the wall where it shattered into a dozen pieces. The sound of his rage was the only thing that broke the silence of the conquered bridge. Back in the dark depths of the ship, Captain Jin, listening through a hidden microphone,
Heard the roar.
he looked at Hana and Min. They were hiding in a storage locker on Deck 5, surrounded by cleaning supplies and spare parts. They have the bridge, Jin said quietly. Min allowed herself a small, tired smile. Now the real work begins. The silence on the Cathar command ship had become a physical thing, heavy and cold. The commander sat in his command throne, his claws digging into the armrests. The reports were no longer just frustrating. They were illogical. They were impossible. His best warriors were dead. His boarding parties were scattered and leaderless. They controlled the bridge, engineering, and the main corridors, yet they were losing. The human ship was a carcass they were sitting inside, and it was poisoning them. His science officer approached, a data slate in his hand. His demeanor was uneasy. "Commander, the behavioral analysis is complete. It is disturbing." "Explain," the commander hissed. "The human resistance does not follow any known military model. They have abandoned all central command points. They have no clear hierarchy left, and yet their coordination is perfect." The science officer called up data on the main screen. It showed maps of the human ship, with red lines tracing the movements of the remaining crew. They are not soldiers. Their profiles indicate they are engineers, biologists, communications technicians, but they are acting as a single organism. "Get to the point," the commander snapped. "The point, Commander, is that we have misjudged their fundamental nature. Most species possess a powerful instinct for individual self-preservation. When defeat is certain, this instinct demands surrender to avoid total annihilation. It is logical." The screen changed to show data from the fight. The humans, their preservation instinct is different. It is collective. The individual is willing to be destroyed completely if it means the group, the tribe, the ship can survive a little longer, or even just hurt us a little more. They are not fighting to win. They are fighting to make our victory meaningless. The commander stared at the data. He saw the human who had thrown himself in front of a plasma bolt for his comrade. He saw the apprentice who had driven a suicide vehicle. They were not heroes. They were components, sacrificing themselves for the whole. "This is aberrant," the commander said, but the certainty in his voice was gone. "It is for us," the science officer agreed. "For them, it seems to be normal. And worse, they are learning. They are adapting their tactics faster than we can. They are using our strength, our predictability, our logic against us." The commander looked back at the tactical display. The little red dots representing his forces were static. They were holding positions that were worthless. The humans were everywhere and nowhere. He had had enough. The resource was too costly. The lesson was too bitter. "Recall all boarding parties," the commander ordered, his voice flat. "Prepare to scuttle the human vessel. Target their power core with a focused ion beam. Trigger a catastrophic overload. We will erase this problem from the void." The order went out. On the Odyssey, the Cathar warriors began to pull back, heading for their boarding pods. The fight was over. They were leaving. In the storage locker on Deck 5, Jin received the message from Hana, who was monitoring external sensors from a different hiding spot. "Captain, they're pulling out. Their ships are powering up a new weapon. It's an ion signature. They're targeting our warp core." Jin leaned his head back against a cold metal shelf. He had known it would come to this. When they could not take the ship, they would destroy it. It was the final, logical step. He looked at the faces of Min and the 3 other crew members with him in the locker. They were tired, dirty, and wounded, but their eyes were clear. They had known the cost from the beginning. "It's time," Jin said softly. "The final phase," Min nodded. "I'll get to the thruster control. It's a long shot." "It's the only shot we have," Jin said. He opened a channel. It was a weak, localized signal, bouncing through the ship's damaged internal network.
Hana, are you ready?
In a dark science lab, Hana was at a console, her face lit by a single screen. "The package is ready, Captain." Tay delivered the drive. "The Odyssey's AI has been compiling the data for the last hour. It's quite a speech." "Send it," Jin said, "on all frequencies. Make sure they hear it." He then turned to his small group. "We need to get to the auxiliary control for the maneuvering thrusters. It's on deck 3, let's move." They slipped out of the locker and into the dark, empty corridors. The ship felt dead. The Cathar were gone. The only sound was the groaning of the dying vessel. Meanwhile, on the Cathar command ship, the weapons officer reported. "Ion beam charged and locked. We will induce a cascade failure in their core. Breach in approximately 10 minutes. The commander gave a grim nod of satisfaction. This would be a clean end. Then the comms officer looked up, confused. "Commander, we are receiving a massive data burst from the human ship. It is on all channels. It is not a communication. It is a data packet." "Display it," the commander ordered, curious despite himself. The main screen lit up not with a face, but with a flood of information. It was a history lesson. It showed simple text and moving images of ancient human warriors, fighting with spears and shields against impossible odds. It showed a small group of soldiers in a fort surrounded, refusing to surrender. It showed vast cities in rubble, with humans still fighting in the ruins. It showed soldiers in frozen trenches, in dense jungles, in desert sands. It was a record of Stalingrad, the Alamo, Thermopylae. It was a record of every last stand, every hopeless battle, every time humans had been told to surrender and had chosen to die instead. The data was accompanied by simple, translated explanations. Collective defense instinct. Costly victory. The price of a cornered animal. The Cathar on the bridge watched, silent and bewildered. They saw humans charging machine gun nests. They saw firefighters running into collapsing towers. They saw people linking arms in the face of tanks. It was not a declaration of war. It was an explanation, a warning. It was the human ship in its final moments telling them exactly what they were and what they had forced the humans to become. The commander felt a cold dread seep into him. He finally understood the science officer's report. This was not a battle against a crew. It was a battle against an idea. A terrible, resilient, and vicious idea. His moment of understanding was shattered by a scream from his tactical officer. The human ship. "It's moving!" The commander spun to look. The Odyssey, dead and drifting, was turning. A faint glow came from its rear, the weak flicker of its emergency maneuvering thrusters. It was a pathetic amount of power, not nearly enough to escape. But it was enough to turn. The massive, crippled vessel was slowly, agonizingly, rotating its nose away from the Cathar ships. It was pointing its side towards them. No, the commander realized with a jolt of horror. It was not pointing its side. It was pointing its belly. And in its belly was the warp core already going critical. The Odyssey was not trying to run. It was aiming. It was using its last breath to turn itself into a gun. The bridge of the Cathar command ship was a scene of frozen panic. The giant screen showed the dying human vessel, the UES Odyssey, turning towards them with a terrible, slow purpose. The weak glow from its maneuvering thrusters was the most terrifying thing the commander had ever seen. "It's on a collision course," the tactical officer screamed, his voice losing its usual guttural calm. The commander could only watch, his mind struggling to process the illogic of it. The data packet was still scrolling on a secondary screen, images of ancient human sacrifices and modern heroism. They had sent a cultural suicide note before turning themselves into a bomb. "Evasive action," the commander roared, finding his voice. "Full reverse thrust, now!" The ship shuddered as the powerful engines strained to push it backwards. But they had been sitting still, confident in their victory. The Odyssey, for all its damage, had already built a slow, drifting momentum. The distance between them was too short. On the Odyssey, the end was a countdown in red numbers. In the auxiliary control room on Deck 3, Min slammed her hand on the final thrust vector control. The last of the ship's battery power surged to the thrusters, locking the ship's course. It was done. They were now a bullet aimed at the heart of their enemy. She looked at Captain Jin. There was nothing more to say. The groans of the dying ship were getting louder. A deep, resonant hum was building from the core, a sound that vibrated in their bones. In the science lab, Hana watched the internal temperature of the warp core spike into the red. Warnings flashed across her screen before it went dark. She sat back in her chair, closing her eyes. She thought of green plants and quiet labs. It had been a good ship. Deep in the ship's computer core, tucked into a narrow service space, Tay held the data drive tight. He had sent the package just as the captain ordered. Now he listened to the final sounds of his home. He was scared, but he was not alone. He was with his crew. On the Cathar command ship, the collision alarm was a continuous piercing shriek. The view on the main screen was filled with the scarred and burning hull of the Odyssey. It grew larger with every second. "They're going to ram us," the tactical officer yelled. The commander could only watch the approaching ship. He saw the holes his own weapons had blasted in its side. He saw the burns and the broken parts. And he saw that it was not stopping. It was the embodiment of the data packet. It was the final physical proof that humans do not surrender. They simply find new ways to fight. The Odyssey struck the Cathar command ship. It was not a clean, sharp impact. It was a grinding, tearing, screeching collapse of metal and physics. The much smaller Odyssey plowed into the belly of the giant warship, its own forward sections disintegrating instantly against the thicker armor. But it did not need to survive the impact. It only needed to deliver its payload. The damaged warp core, pushed past its limits by the Cathar's own ion beam, could no longer contain the energy within. The breach was instant and total. For a fraction of a second, there was a light brighter than a star. A tiny new sun bloomed in the dark space between the two ships. It was the color of pure, hot energy. Then the light expanded. It consumed the Odyssey first, vaporizing the brave, broken ship and everyone left inside. Then it swallowed the Cathar command ship. The mighty warship, which had never lost a battle, was torn apart from the inside. Its armor plates flew away like leaves in a storm. Its hull split open, spilling fire and debris into the void. The explosion was silent in the vacuum of space, a beautiful and terrible flower of destruction. The shockwave hit the two remaining Cathar ships like a physical blow. They were tossed sideways, their shields flaring white as they struggled to absorb the energy. When the light faded, there was nothing left of the Odyssey or the command ship, but an expanding cloud of glittering dust and metal fragments, catching the light of a distant sun. On the bridge of one of the surviving Cathar ships, the crew was stunned into silence. They stared at the empty space where their commander and his mighty ship had been. The easy mission to capture a primitive science vessel was over. They had won the fight. They had destroyed the enemy, but it did not feel like a victory. It felt like a catastrophe. The new commander, a lower-ranking officer who had never expected to be in charge, looked at the sensor data. He looked at the debris field. He looked at the final transmission log which had recorded the humans' last message, the history of their stubbornness. He thought of the reports, the tools, the traps, the vehicle, the empty bridge, the final suicidal turn. He opened a channel to the other ship, his voice hollow. "Retreat," he said. There was no argument. The two Cathar warships turned, their powerful engines flaring. They did not move with pride or purpose. They moved with haste. They jumped to faster-than-light speed, fleeing the scene as quickly as possible. They left behind only silence and glittering dust. The battle was over. The UES Odyssey was gone. Captain Jin, Min, Hana, Tae, Jun, Soo, Dae, Lee, and all the others were gone, but they had not surrendered. The message they had sent, both in data and in fire, would travel faster than any ship. It would be analyzed and debated by the Cathar High Command. New protocols would be written. New warnings would be issued to all their fleets. The story of the Odyssey would become a lesson about a species that could not be predicted by logic. A species that saw a hopeless situation not as an end, but as a new set of rules for a different game. The galaxy was a big and careful place. And after that day, the Cathar and soon every other species that learned of it would be very, very careful when they met humans. They had learned that humans do not surrender, and that making them feel cornered was the most dangerous thing in the universe. The two surviving Cathar ships did not stop when they reached the edge of their own territory. They flew fast and straight for the homeworld. The crews were silent. The usual proud chatter was gone. They had seen something that broke their understanding of the universe. On the lead ship, the new commander, a sub-commander named Var, sat in the command throne that felt too big for him. He reviewed the battle logs again and again. He watched the human ship turn. He saw the flash of light. He read the human's final data packet. The words "costly victory" echoed in his mind. It had not been costly. It had been a defeat. They had lost a command ship, a commander, and dozens of elite warriors to a group of scientists. When they landed at the main military spaceport, the air was cold and heavy. A delegation of high commanders was waiting for them. They expected a report of a successful capture. They saw instead the shaken crew and the single damaged ship returning. In the high command chamber, Var stood before the council of 7 senior commanders. The room was dark and circular, lit from below, making the commanders' faces look like sharp stone masks. "Report," the lead commander, an old Cathar named Grax, said. His voice was like grinding boulders. Var placed a data crystal on the central console. "The human science vessel designated UES Odyssey has been destroyed." He paused, choosing his words carefully. The command ship and all hands aboard were lost with it. A ripple of disbelief went through the council. Grax's eyes narrowed. "Explain this loss." Var activated the console. He showed them the battle. Not just the numbers, but the recordings. He showed them the Cathar warriors falling to tools. He showed them the crazy vehicle and engineering. He showed them the empty bridge and the android with its mocking message. He let them hear the calm human voice in the dark corridors. Finally, he showed them the Odyssey turning and the final bright explosion. He finished by displaying the human data packet. The history of their last stands. The council was silent for a long time. They watched humans with primitive weapons fighting to the last man. They saw the pattern. It was not random bravery. It was a culture. A habit. Grax finally spoke, his voice quieter now. Their technological assessment was primitive. Their tactical strength was negligible. How did this happen? Var took a deep breath. "We misunderstood their primary weapon, Commander. It is not their ships or their guns." He pointed to the data packet. "It is their mindset. We believe that all life fears death. For them, it seems the group is more important than the self. They do not see surrender as life. They see it as a betrayal of their tribe. When cornered, their instinct is not to yield. It is to make the victory so expensive that no one will want to fight them again." Another commander scoffed. "So they are animals. Rabid beasts." "Worse," Var said, looking directly at the commander. "Beasts are predictable. These humans, they are creative in their violence. They use their environment. They used our expectations against us. They turned their own weakness into a weapon. A beast bites. These humans, they rewire the cage to electrocute you when you enter." He brought up the final image, the Odyssey on its collision course. They knew they would die, so they found a way to use their deaths as a tool. They were not trying to escape. They were trying to send a message, and they did. The lead commander, Grax, leaned back. He looked at the data for a long time. He saw the reports of the human crew's jobs. Engineers, biologists, cooks, not soldiers. "Your recommendation, Sub-Commander Var?" Grax asked. Var stood straight. "We cannot treat them like other species. A show of force will not make them submit. It will only make them more determined. Cornering them is the single most dangerous action we can take." He paused, ensuring his next words were clear. "I recommend we add a new doctrine to all military protocols regarding humanity. Classification, avoid if possible." The scoffing commander laughed. "Avoid. The Cathar avoid no one. Then be prepared to lose a fleet to a single cargo ship," Var replied, his voice cold. "If engagement is necessary, the doctrine must be clear. Do not board. Do not attempt capture. Do not give them a problem to solve. Do not give them time to think." He looked around the room at the proud ancient faces. "If you must fight them, you must do so from the farthest possible range. You must use overwhelming, instantaneous force. You must ensure there is not a single second between your decision to attack and their total annihilation. You must leave no puzzle for them. You must leave no corner for them to hide in." He pointed again to the wreckage of the command ship on the screen. "Because if you do, they will not see a hopeless battle. They will see an opportunity to innovate in the field of violence. They will turn their ship into a bomb. They will turn their tools into weapons. They will turn their own deaths into a lesson for us. The room was silent. The truth of his words was written in the fire of the explosion still frozen on the screen. Grack slowly nodded. He entered a command into his console. A new file was created. It was titled Species Directive, Humanity, Homo sapiens. He began to type the new core doctrine, his claws tapping slowly on the metal. Directive 1. Avoid direct engagement if possible. Directive 2. If engagement is necessary, authorize only total instantaneous annihilation from maximum range. Directive 3. Do not board. Do not corner. Do not negotiate. Directive 4. Under no circumstances give them a tactical problem to solve. Their capacity for asymmetric and inventive warfare is limitless. They do not surrender. They escalate. The orders were sent out to every ship in the Cathar fleet. The story of the Odyssey became a required study for all commanders. The day the Odyssey died was the day the galaxy changed. The Cathar, one of the most powerful empires, had learned a new kind of fear. It was not a fear of a stronger enemy. It was a fear of an enemy who refused to act like one. An enemy who saw a lost battle not as an end, but as a chance to rewrite the rules. And across the galaxy on a small blue planet called Earth, nobody knew what had happened to the Odyssey. They only knew it was missing. They mourned the loss of brave explorers. They did not know that their crew, their friends and families had not just died. They had sent a message that would make the vast, dark, and careful universe think twice before ever knocking on their door. The message was simple, written in fire and blood. We do not surrender.